Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for what I think is a very timely conversation: construction law in transition. When we talk about transition, we are not just referring to regulatory tweaks. We are talking about shifting risk models, sustainability, becoming enforceable, technology embedding itself into contracts, and even changing how disputes are argued. So today's discussion is really about this. Is construction law evolving gradually, or are we in the middle of something more structural? I'm Roopa Somasundaran from MRP Advisory, a boutique law firm providing specialized legal solution for infrastructure, construction, and engineering related contracts, arbitration, and dispute resolution. Let me introduce you to our esteemed panel. We have Mohammed Talib. He's a partner with Pinsent Masons. His practice focuses on the contentious aspects of infrastructure projects, acting for main contractors, subcontractors, and consultants in arbitration and litigation. He has been involved in a wide range of construction and infrastructure disputes in the Middle East and the Asia Pacific under a variety of arbitration routes. He is also a solicitor, advocate in Hong Kong, a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and is on the HKIAC list of arbitrators. He has been recognized as a next generation partner in construction by Legal 500, a future leader for arbitration by Lexology, and on the Legal 500 arbitration power list for Hong Kong. Welcome, Mohammed. Next, we have Nikolai. Nikolai Khomiak is an associate director in SW Tenet. Prior to joining SW Tenet, he worked in one of the big four companies and in a number of construction and consulting companies as well. Nikolai has over 10 years' experience in construction and has led major projects in oil and gas, infrastructure, metals and mining, real estate, and other sectors across Europe and Asia, including the GCC. During his business career, he participated in auditing, analyzing, monitoring, and optimization of more than 50 construction investment projects. Nikolai's key professional areas are related to claim management and expert witness reports preparation for arbitrations, construction audits and supervisions, technical due diligences, project management consulting, various technical assessments, and others. Welcome, Nikolai.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here.
Thank you. Next, we have Chandni on the panel. Chandni Jaitly heads the business development vertical at Masin AI. She has over 17 years of experience and has led sales, account management, and client management for enterprise accounts, driving growth through AI, ML-powered acquisition strategies. Her previous leadership roles were at Barclays, Rainmaker, Hero, and Denali. An alumni of XLRI Jamshedpur, Chandni is recognized for her client-first approach, domain expertise, and passion. Welcome, Chandni.
Thank you so much, Roopa, for a warm welcome.
Thank you all. So let's begin with today's topic, and let's start with what does transition really mean? So let's start broad. Mohammed, Hong Kong has traditionally been a benchmark jurisdiction for construction contracts and dispute resolution. So what regulatory or legal trends are you seeing that may significantly affect how projects are structured or disputed over the next few years?
That's a really good question. I think there are probably three major trends that we are seeing at the moment. The first is that Hong Kong was traditionally quite a freedom of contract-centric jurisdiction, but we're now seeing the first real attempts at statutory intervention in construction contracting culture. And so we've joined the adjudication and security of payment revolution that has been sweeping many jurisdictions. So we are seeing statutory prohibitions on things like pay when paid or pay if paid clauses, bringing in statutory rights to be paid and to suspend. And we're also seeing the rise of adjudication to resolve construction disputes. The second big trend we are seeing is a focus on building regulation and safety. So we have had obviously a strong reaction to a recent fire in Hong Kong, which has seen a focus on fire safety and fire prevention as being at the core of the construction industry's focus when it goes on site in the future. And the third big trend that we are seeing is a focus on collaborative contracting cultures. So the government has been making a transition to the use of the NEC form of contract in Hong Kong. And it has really taken the idea of mutual trust and cooperation and moving away from traditional adversarial contracting cultures to heart. And it has been encouraging industry to follow in its footsteps and for there to be a wider adoption and recognition of behavioral change within the industry to drive more systematic cultural and technological change at the same time. I think you're on mute still, Roopa.
You're muted.
That was quite interesting. And Nikolai, construction law is often seen as conservative and contract-driven. Yet our title suggests real transition, as you know. So from where you sit, that is in the Middle East.
Middle East, yes, correct. Dubai.
Yes. So what is your observation for Hong Kong and Middle East, and what is the fundamental change that we can witness in 2026, as well as what we saw in 2025?
Sure, yeah. So as a construction expert in Dubai, we can see that significant legal evolution in the Middle East is coming right now, right here, and it may be characterized by three things, in my opinion. So first, we are seeing, that legal focus is expanding beyond contracts to govern conduct, let's say. So a prime example is the UAE's new civil transaction law, Federal Decree Law number 25 of 2025, so which enshrines principles like good faith, proportionality, and pre-contractual liability into enforceable legal standards. And this directly shapes how parties behave during tendering and negotiations. The second thing is probably that construction law is becoming proactively regulatory, not just reactively punitive. So Dubai Law number 7 of 2025, we talked about it with you, Roopa, actually within one of your boat guests last summer, if I'm
Yes.
not mistaken. So it illustrates the shift by mandating contractor classification, professional certification, and enforceable codes of conduct. So this moves oversight from resolving disputes after they happen to regulating the market before projects begin, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. So, and the third thing is the sustainability is transitioning from voluntary policy to binding law. So under Federal Decree Law number 11 of 2024, that's just effective from since May 2025. So projects must now measure and report emissions and submit decarbonization plans. So this law directly impacts project design, costing, and regulatory approval. So surely I'm in Dubai and our focus is Middle East, but surely we oversee and we supervise what's happening in Asia. And I know that in Hong Kong, in other parts of Asia, a similar shift is on the way actually. So this is a reflector in great focus on ESG, smart infrastructure, and all of the digital monitoring of construction site, and stricter safety, accountability, and all the stuff like that.
Perfect. So we've talked about structural and regulatory change, and technology is often the invisible driver of that change. So, Chandni, before we move deeper into regulation, from your vantage point of view, working closely with construction contracts and disputes data, are you seeing behavioral changes in how stakeholders manage contracts even before dispute arises?
Um, I would say yes, Roopa. There's a shift in the behavior which is happening, which we're seeing in the project and the infrastructure space, because gone are those days where people used to manage the project and state that, the dispute may arise or may happen, or it is rare or exceptional. However, today we have seen that, the projects are happening, keeping in mind an assumption that the dispute can happen anytime. So they need to start early. This is the mindset shift that has happened in the recent past, I would say. Along with that, I think there are two changes that I have seen, which I have noticed being towards the technology side of it. One is, of course, where I have seen that I will call it as a defensive project management, where people are kind of focus on the delivery part of it. Along with that, they're also managing the records of the data. And the simple reason is because what they're doing is that whenever there's a notices which needs to be replied, or the letter which needs to be created or replied about, they're doing on a timely basis, because I think everybody is now aware when we are signing up or working on any of the contract, any sort of a procedural compliance misses can lead to losing that particular dispute. This is the one change that I've seen, and hence, I think people are being ready with their the documentation part and their reporting part of it. Along with that, I think the major shift which I've seen, and of course, being at the side of the AI, I think the AIs are supporting, on a regular basis, where you can just document your reports, assess those reports, kind of reply to letters, whether you want to have any sort of an insights. That is something that I think people are documenting on a regular, real time basis. And I think with that, and I think Nicola and Talib was also agree with me that now parties are becoming more insightful in terms of that, if we are managing all the records at the end of the project, can be a timely affair, can be a risky affair in case if you get the data or you might not get the data. Along with that, I think this is going to be an expensive affair as well. So people are becoming more towards the building an evidentiary repository of the real time records, so that whenever they need those information, they can have it. So these kind of a shift that I'm seeing, and I think people are more focused that instead of doing all the analysis which happens at the end of the project, why not bring in the legal people, or the legal entities before, when they can assess that why the relays are happening or why the dispute will happen. So those are certain things which are happening, and I think this is going to happen because if we talk about the tools and the AIs which are coming into the picture, I think these are going to be the shift which we are going to see, because those are the technology which helps you in documenting all of your records, which I think the stakeholders are also well aware that those can be any sort of an action, your progresses can be traced in the later stage. So which becomes like the change of the shift in the behavior, that any action that they are taking, they are well ensured that they are following on the timelines, and they are documenting it along with that. So I would rather say that the informal flexibility is now reduced, and people are well aware that or I would rather say that the dispute unconsciousness is becoming and moving from the arbitration stage to the execution stage. Everybody is well aware that, okay, from the day one, what are the measures and the steps that they need to see, because now when the technology is in the place, I think we will see those shifts happening on a regular day-to-day basis. So yes, there's definitely a shift which is happening.
Yes, we can all witness that and experience it in our day-to-day activities. So now we come to the second segment of our conversation, which is revolving around regulatory convergence and regional differences. So this is for Mohammed as well as Nikolai, and we'll start with Mohammed. Mohammed, do you see convergence between Asian and Middle Eastern regulatory approaches in construction law, or are these regions still evolving very differently?
I would say that there's kind of a yes and no answer to that if I can do that. The yes answer is that there is convergence for sure. But actually the no is because the answers that are being given to the same set of problems are slightly different. And so if I can start with, for example, the regulatory approach, I think both jurisdictions and both continents have taken a very proactive, statute-based focus on construction. It's kind of recognized that it's not enough to leave it to the free market to sort out construction, contracting, and project delivery. But the regulatory approaches are still quite different, I think, in the sense that Hong Kong would perhaps be an example of an economy that tends to stay on the free market side of it. The Middle East are economies that tend to stay on the free market side of it. Whereas if you look further across Asia into, say, Australia, you'd see an increasing focus on statute and security of payment and liens and trust accounts and retention money accounts, all being statutory areas of intervention. And so really a desire to systematize and regularize the way construction culture and contracting behavior works. The second thing I'd say is obviously there's continuing to be a convergence around standard forms and the use of standard form contracting. That remains a major driver across the use of FIDIC in many jurisdictions, but also what we're seeing in Asia is actually the adoption of NEC. So the Hong Kong government has been using it for a pilot and now more widely. Singapore has rolled out a pilot for it. The Chinese government is looking at it as a pilot form of contract, and we're seeing trials of that in Australia. So there's sort of this desire to explore different answers to the same question to see if there's something that we can pick up from this change. The third trend I'd focus on is really digitalization. There's a huge push by everybody to focus on digital twins, digital deliverables, ensuring that people are working from a common source of truth. But how people bringing that into reality, the software tools that they're using, the trade-offs that they're willing to accept are still very disparate. And so we're quite far away from the day that we can say there's a single BIM standard or there's a single set of software deliverables that are going to be widely accepted. And obviously all of those choices in terms of tools and techniques come with their own pros and cons and trade-offs. And often those trade-offs are actually being driven by the regulator, and they're being driven by the needs of more sophisticated procurers who are able to at least understand and utilize these because they have imperatives like looking at the whole life cycle deliverability and value of an asset. And they care about the long-term sustainability and carbon neutral nature of the assets. And these sorts of trends are common across jurisdictions, but they're being implemented at different paces and in different ways.
Correct, absolutely. And Nikolai, what are your views?
So pretty much, my position is quite similar to what Mohammed has said. But anyway, I think that there is a partial convergence in objectives, but divergence in regulatory techniques. So both regions are really similar on, higher professional standards, ESG, sustainability, integration, digitalization, and of permitting, monitoring, compliance, and other stuff. However, the Middle East, particularly the United Arab Emirates, they are adopting a centralized legislated approach using federate and emirate level laws to impose uniform rules across the market. And by contrast, Hong Kong and many Asian jurisdictions rely more heavily on soft law, codes of practice, and guidance notes, and other stuff. So I do see the convergence, yes, in the what and why. So they are doing it. So sustainable infrastructure, fair payment, efficient dispute resolution, but no in the how they are doing that. So the legal sources in interpretive methods, mandatory rules remain profoundly, different in these regions.
True. So one area where convergence is particularly interesting is sustainability. So, sustainability, is it as aspirational or enforceable? Let's explore that now. So, Mohammed, in more mature regulatory markets, are sustainability obligations becoming enforceable legal standards, or do they remain largely aspirational within contracts?
I think there is a strong push towards making them enforceable. The direction of travel that almost all big companies now recognize that things like listing rules are getting tighter in terms of how they monitor and require reporting of emissions. That means it needs to be run through their supply chain. And if they start disclosing this information, they know that they will be audited, they know that they need to be accurate, and they know that this information therefore needs to be coming out and maintained. And it's natural once you start putting this information into your public documentation that you'll want to be doing a better job at it every year. No company wants to be the one company that has to come back and report doing worse on its climate targets this year than it did last year. And so the supply chain is moving in that direction. The challenge often is really what are you going to monitor? To what level can it be monitored? And who's going to audit that when it's produced as a statement? And often the challenges are often around the lower tiers of the supply chain. Bigger businesses are able to invest the time and skill into acquiring the know-how and delivering the implementation. But, construction runs from the biggest contractors down to the smallest one-person shop, and it's ensuring that the supply chain has that level of capability. But the reality is that, most states have their roadmaps to being carbon neutral. They are driven by strong policy aspirations in this regard. And whether it's through public contracting and public contracting norms or through wider market regulation, it's become very real. And we've seen the contract language and the drafting of clauses that enable this to be put in. The X29 option on the NEC form of contract is an optional clause designed specifically to give effect to carbon aspirations and climate targets. And that language is there as a model for people to pick up and apply into their own contracts. And we are seeing that.
And taking that into a high growth context, Nikolai, in fast developing markets like the Middle East, how are sustainability requirements being balanced against speed, cost, and scale?
Yeah, a good question, Roopa. So we know that UAE and Dubai precisely are the markets which are focused on the sustainability pretty hard. And we all know about many regulations, about many codes and etc. Like Dubai's green building regulations, Abu Dhabi Estidama rating systems, and so on. So the balance is increasingly achieved through regulatory integration rather than trade-offs, in my opinion. So sustainability requirements are being embedded at the design stage, like energy modeling, material selection, etc. So through mandatory reporting rather than immediate emissions caps. So this shifts sustainability from a soft goal to a measurable, auditable, contractual, deliverable, creating clear legal consequences for failure. So legally, we are seeing sophisticated risk allocation clauses that address who bears the cost if green steel or low carbon salmon becomes unavailable mid-project, or if regulations tighten unexpectedly, let's say, provision that were rare just 3 years ago, actually. And the UAE's climate framework focuses on measurement, transparency, planning, rather than abrupt construction restrictions, enabling large-scale development to continue while aligning with net zero 2050 goals. So just to sum up, sustainability is becoming a cost planning and financing issue, not a project stopping constraint, let's say.
So, Chandni, from a data and AI perspective, sustainability obligations generate reporting requirements, compliance metrics, certifications. So, how do you see AI helping project teams actually operationalize sustainability commitments rather than just drafting them into contracts?
Sure. And I think what we've seen, I think from years to years, I think that anything when we talk about in terms of the sustainability in construction has always been about writing about the good intentions, about the green clauses, and about what are the things that we are going to do, how we are going to reduce the emissions. All of those has always been put into the contracts, but of course these are not being tracked properly, or actually being talked about that what actually happens on the side on a day-to-day basis. And I think this is why we have seen that there's a big change which is happening with the help of AI. And what I have noticed is that when sustainability in construction is taking a shift towards the AI, what happens is that you are getting exposed to having the live dashboards where you are having a real time tracking of what you have signed off, of what you have talked about. Wherein, when we talk about, just about the sustainability goal, we used to talk about that, okay, reducing the carbons, or maybe using the recycled materials, or achieving the green certifications. However, what we've seen is that this is all being written in a contract, but nobody is kind of tracking it, right? Nobody is discovering it, that why this is happening, right? And when people are actually doing an analysis of this is like way too late to fix it up, right? But with the help of AI, what we've seen is at the start of it, like Nikolai said, that there are a lot of stages where we have to take into the consideration, whether that is at the design stage or maybe at the other stage. But what I strongly feel it at the starting, at the beginning of it, when we are doing the planning of it, when we're talking about that, okay, these are the contract terms, green clauses that we have put in. I think that's when we integrate our AIs, the Masin AI, into the consideration, where we're talking about what are the supplier information are there, what are the material that we are going to use, what are the BAQs which are coming into the picture, right? So that's where the team can take a support of AI, of having a real time analysis of it. Because the moment you are going above your carbon limits, right, the system is actually throwing an alert to you, or kind of updating you that, hey, this is the time that you are going over. Now, what are the mitigation, or what are the steps that you're going to take to ensure that you are still meeting your green certifications, right? So this is something that we have seen. Along with that, I think I would also say that there's also an integration part which has happened, right? Now sustainability is no longer a separate form. Right now it is being considered as a cost and into a time. Because why? Because any changes that you're suggesting, right, maybe there is a change in the material that you're doing, or maybe the approvals, or maybe any sort of the machinery change which is happening, actually that is going to impact your clauses, your targets that you have taken for it. So that's where the AI is going to say that, hey, this is where the major impact and the shift is going to happen. So the accountability becomes where you are actually tracing that what we have signed off, and AI is flagging that out, that okay, these are the some missing environmental data which is missing out in here. So when you notice that, it becomes more enforceable, because you are seeing that, you're witnessing it, and that is not becoming an optional at that particular time. So I would say that generally people say that AI is good to draft green clauses, but I would rather say that if it is put in the beginning of the stage, then definitely it becomes a day-to-day tool which helps you in guiding that, okay, how the business is being run and how you are going to meet your sustainability targets. So I think with the help of all the shift in the technology side of it, the data, without the data and the monitoring, it was just becoming like a statement. But when there's a technology part of it, you can definitely measure it, you can definitely audit it, and can definitely enforce it also. So yeah, that's what I say here.
So definitely it's going to be from green clauses to becoming evergreen, the presence of AI.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think in our regular day-to-day life also, when we are ordering to any of our, Flipkarts of the world, or any sort of those, where also, when you're kind of receiving any of the materials, right? you generally see that, they say, please go no green, right? Like a just go no paper bags and all, so that it is also stating that we are moving towards that sustainability era along with the technology. So yeah.
Yes. So technology is getting embedded in projects. So now moving fully into technology, particularly AI, digital twins, and data-driven monitoring is increasingly embedded in projects themselves. Mohammed, from a legal perspective, what new risks and opportunities does this create?
Sure. I mean, I think the opportunities are easy to see. There's obviously a massive benefit to the project from being able to do things virtually before you have to do them physically, in terms of time, in terms of avoiding issues, in terms of spotting challenges and planning mitigation measures. It is obviously also a tremendous driver for cost efficiency, and therefore to be able to find efficient alternative solutions, whether that's through cost saving design, whether that's identifying the variations or other changes that might bring a benefit to the project. It does require a lot from the team in terms of having everybody working on the same set of tools in a way that they are aligned in terms of responsibility, in terms of update cycles, in terms of tracking the changes that have been made and following through the consequences of the changes that have been made. It obviously generates a tremendous amount of data, and then the onus really is on the parties to make sense of that data and to be checking for it in a sensible way. But you do need to be mindful that there will be the expectation that you will have this data. And so as, for example, disputes might proliferate around these sorts of issues, there will be a forensic ability to go through every single change that was made on a digital data system to check who made the change and when they did it and why didn't they spot the issue that should have come out from it. And it'll be also a question of really how to deal with the contribution of the machine to all of this. Yes, we will have, for example, AI facilitated design, but what responsibility for a design error now belongs to the AI and what belongs to the human checker? And how are we going to strike these balances, either through contractual nexuses or general statutory liability frameworks? And I don't think anybody really knows where we're going to reach the balance on this. But I think when we're reaching things and dealing with systems which have safety consequences, especially because design and methods of work and work sequences have impacts on human safety, people will be looking at these things very carefully and wanting to ensure that they're developed and delivered in a way that's consistent but auditable and verifiable. And I mean, the goal from all of this is really to bring those digital twins into life in the contracts in a way that takes advantage of their upside, but makes sure you're managing things like data, cybersecurity, IP risks, data integrity. And nowadays, the reality and the way that the world is shifting, things like national security and data export regulations have become very, very important considerations on many projects. And people do need to be balancing how the data is created, used, and optimized across many different windows, not the lens of just the commercial construction lens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so important. So, Nikolai, how are construction contracts adapting to account for AI-driven tools, digital monitoring, or automated decision-making on projects?
Yeah, a great question, Roopa. So the nature of contractual agreements is undergoing a transformation, evolving from, static document-centric instruments into dynamic platforms. So contracts recently drafted, let's say, are progressively incorporating sophisticated clauses addressing digital assets and autonomous monitoring, for example, provisions governing digital twin liabilities and the ownership of structured data from BIM building information modeling are becoming pretty, popular and standard. So furthermore, AI-driven verification systems utilizing drones, IoT, the Internet of Things, sensors, and computer vision are being explicitly codified within the inspection, testing, and acceptance sections. So this contractual formalization enables the automation of milestone achievement certification, shifting validation from periodic manual oversight to continuous data-driven assessment. And another modernization is automated execution. So I'm not a professional at this stuff. I'm just a civil engineer, but we've all heard much about blockchain. So the principle of contingent payment is being redefined through the adoption of self-executing protocols. So some kind of a smart contracts operating either on distributed ledger technology or through automated triggers within ERP systems are being introduced into subcontracting frameworks. So these mechanisms ensure that upon the algorithmic verification of a predefined milestone as authenticated by the integrated AI monitoring system, the correspondent payment is initiated automatically and irrevocably eliminating manual approval processes and associated delays. Roopa, you're muted, sorry.
Oh, thank you. Chandni, Masin AI is purpose-built for construction contracts and disputes. Construction projects generate vast amounts of contractual and project data. So where does AI add the value most? Whether it's the drafting stage, execution stage, or the dispute stage?
All right. I think a very interesting question and close to my heart, I would say. Being this side of the table into the Mason AI, I would say that Mason AI supports on all three stages, however, in a very different way. So when we're talking about a drafting stage, I would rather say that it is a preventive measure that we are taking where the AI, the Mason AI, is going to help you in drafting the contracts and bidding for it in a very clearer manner. So when I say a clearer and a fairer manner, which means that any sort of a risk that it associates, it's going to highlight that. So whether we are drafting any sort of a contract, mentioning and comparing it with the FIDIC format or the custom contracts that we have, or maybe any sort of a EPC contract, right? It supports you to create that. Along with that, it also helps you to show any sort of an inconsistency which is there, or a discrepancy which is there, any sort of a clauses that we are building up there. So all of those is something that Mason AI helps you in at the stage of drafting. So it's more of that it's preventing you before even the project starts in. So now I call this stage as a preventive stage. Now, the another stage that I talked about is the execution stage. The execution stage is where it is a very important stage where everything is happening. We are kind of creating a lot of data, reports, correspondence, and there's a lot of reports that are being analyzed, right? So what happens is at that particular time, the Mason AI is help you with all the end-to-end details in terms of assessing, doing the analysis of the report, whether those are the EOTs, why the delay has happened, or maybe where the a letter has reached, whether that has been drafted or that has been missed in the correspondence. The reason is that the AI is going to highlight the early warning signs, and it can support you with all the documentation of it, because I think a lot of time at the execution time we have seen that there are people who probably feel that, okay, what sort of a templates or what sort of a industry templates that we need to follow, or what sort of a verbiage that we need to put it in the content while we're replying. So to mitigate all of that, the Mason AI is supporting at every stage so that they can quickly curate and ensure that they're responding to that. So it actually detects even the communication tone in case there are any gaps and any sort of an assertive language or
Did we lose you, Chandni?
I guess we did. Yes.
Right, okay. Okay, meanwhile, while we wait for her, and we know now that disputes are where everything eventually gets tested. So, Mohammed, from a disputes perspective, how is technology changing the way construction claims are proven, particularly with respect to delay analysis, data evidence, and expert testimony?
Sure. I think there are a couple of trends. I mean, the first is I think, construction disputes have always traditionally been viewed as document heavy, but I think the volume of documentation is about to exponentially grow. We're all used to kind of getting a minutes of meeting. Now we have AI transcribers that can write literally in real time the contents of the entire meeting. It's inevitable that those tools are going to be used on some projects, and that is going to proliferate across all contexts. We're going to have a level of documentation and a level of detail that we have probably never had before. Um, the level of technology that is being deployed on sites and the level of sensor suites that are available and the real-time recording that comes with it is going to exponentially grow. There are easily systems out there that can monitor millions of individual inputs in terms of site metrics. And once that's starting to flow through the system, it's being used as a tool of project management largely. And many contractors are not passing that information on to their claims teams, and it's not being used to run claims. But inevitably, that gap will be bridged. And that information about exactly where the claim was, exactly how much it turned, exactly what load it lifted and where it put it, and therefore how many hours it spent idling when there were no loads to lift, is going to be everywhere. And we're all going to have to start processing that information. And we're going to have to think about how to present that information and visualize it or contextualize it in ways that are going to be digestible for decision makers. The AI revolution is definitely going to have an impact when it comes to the use of forensic tools and forensic methods like delay analysis. I've seen tools that attempt to, for example, create automatic delay analysis by taking programs and looking at the updates and therefore inferring what has caused the delay along what it infers to be the critical path. There are tools that will look at drawings and analyze them and do delta views of drawings and tell you what the changes are between them. And then they sort of try and tie together those strings. So you might say, these are the drawings that changed, therefore leading to this delay event in the program. And it's all within the framework of the AI system to try and tie those things together. It's going to be very difficult in terms of document management, in terms of document production, in terms of getting witnesses to speak to that level of complexity and to be able to have their own words played back to them as if they had been written down literally real time. All of these things are going to change dramatically. How we attribute fault and how we allocate blame and therefore contractual liabilities in construction disputes.
Yes, and now we have Chandni back. And while we are talking about the disputes often arise from delays, variations, and documentation gaps. So, how can AI assist in early identification and mitigation of these risks before they crystallize into claims? And we would also love you to complete what you were telling us about AI, Mason AI, being so beneficial, especially at all stages of a dispute.
Sure. Thank you and apologize for that. So yeah, when I was talking about on the dispute side of it, that which is called as when the dispute is already there, there's a lot of contracts and the details, the correspondence, which has already been built up. So how Mason AI helps you is it helps you in quick doing an analysis of it, reading it faster, give you a summary about it in a chronological manner, in case if you want to know about any sort of clauses where it can support you, what are the things that the measures that we need to take. So it basically helps you in strengthening your case, which means that it actually saves your time, your money, and as well as it guides you that what are the steps that you can take. So so to sum it up, Mason AI actually helps you in all the stages, starting from doing a risk analysis, the cash flow analysis, doing any sort of early warning signals, and then finally, at the time of the dispute, it just do all the analysis and suggest you an idea. So yes, Now, coming back to the question that you have asked, how AI can help you in the early identification and mitigation of that, I think I would say in most of the construction disputes, we've all witnessed that, the dispute doesn't happen at a bigger side of it, right? There are small signals that we get initially. There are some issues, the challenges that we foresee, and those are being not addressed. And that is where we see that, okay, there are late approvals, their drawings are not there, or maybe any sort of a correspondence which is not being sent. And this is where, because this is not being addressed, this all sum it up, and that's where it leads to a bigger argument or a bigger dispute. So the idea of that how AI can help you is, I would say that it can actually spot the issue when this is happening. It can actually give you alerts that, okay, while you have already created your checklist for the next 3 months, for so to say, as an example, it can actually highlight that, okay, where are the areas that you have not gotten approval. This is not being delayed from your side. This is something that you have been waiting for it. The machinery is already being here. However, the work did not start because of the XYZ approvals were not in place. So these are the areas where we see that the AI can support you to mitigate these disputes to happen. Along with that, I think if I take an example of a delay, right? Um, in the previous time, that what I have seen is when the project is entirely being executed, that is when we are analyzing all the data, and we are now correlating that, okay, these were the signals which were there, however we missed to reply on that. So all the warning signs which has been given to us earlier, now we are kind of finding that out at a very later stage, wherein the dispute has happened. Now the delay has already happened, right? So with the help of AI, what it actually helps you is that any sort of a changes which is happening in the schedule, or what we have signed up, and then we're not being able to adhere to the timelines. That's when the AI plays a very important role towards that. Also, I think we all have witnessed that, at the time of variation, the client doesn't come and says that, this is the change that we want, can you just do that? Because it will completely change the schedule, right? It'll come as, okay, can you just give me an explanation about, or clarification about, or maybe there is an informal communication which will happen for the variation. But what it happens is that maybe as a human we forgot to document it or do the analysis of it, that this is a change in scope. However, when the AI is in the place, it actually detects the tonality, or the way that the email has been sent across, or the report has been sent across, that, okay, this is a change in scope, which is something that we have not signed up with, right? So this is how the AI actually helps you in ensuring tracking the deadlines, or probably letting you know before the time ends that, okay, these are the measure that you need to see. Along with that, I think I have seen that, I've been talking with one of the client where we see that the documentation is very important, and of course everybody is doing that. However, there's some missing documents which happens while we are presenting for a dispute. At that particular time, the AI, the Masin AI, also helps you creating a repository, because this is where you have been taking a help from, where all the documentation has happened, everything has been happened in a contractually complied manner, and all the information is already aligned. So to sum it up, I would say that this is a place where the AI helps you in completing the records, keep it in as a repository, and also aligned it, right? And also, I think we have seen in the recent examples then where the AI also reads out the behavioral changes that happens, which also helps us, like any sort of a claims that we have already given, the other party is been rejecting that, right? And there have been aggressive emails which are coming. So that gives you an insight that, hey, this is the time when you actually get up, go and sit in front of the customer and talk about that. Okay, what is the issues? What are the challenges that we are facing? So that we can completely dispute and mitigate that to land it to the claim or to the dispute side of it. So I would say that the AI will not completely eradicate the dispute, but of course it will help you in not providing you the last minute surprises, basically. So and I think it's a absolutely a mindset shift. It's not about that who is right, who is wrong. It's about that, okay, where is the problem and how to fix it. So yeah, that's what I would say.
So, on that note, let's look ahead to 2026. So, we've talked about regulation, sustainability, technology, contracts, and disputes. So, let's close by looking forward. So, Mohammed, looking ahead to 2026, what do you believe will be the single biggest legal risk for construction stakeholders, and what can they do today to prepare?
Okay, I think the biggest risk is the transition that we are going through now, which is turning construction businesses from physical brick and mortar businesses into data businesses. And if you don't make that transition probably in the next 12 months, you are going to be left in the dust by the competitors who make that transition. And that requires you to adjust your legal frameworks, adjust your metrics in terms of data creation, control, distribution, whether that's within the digital twins or within the sites, within the project teams, within your claims teams, but really moving from being a construction and physical first organization often to being a data-driven, data-first organization. And I think it's not an intuitive shift for a construction business to make. But if you make that shift, you will be the ones with those better value tenders, better managed projects, delivering on time and under budget. And you'll have that ability to make a transition effectively that many are going to struggle with.
Thank you. So, Nikolai, if you had to give one practical piece of advice to in-house counsel, developers, or contractors navigating construction law in transition, what would it be?
A good one. So I do believe that in the current market, particularly in fast-moving jurisdictions like the Middle East, like Asia, such requirements like green requirements, and clauses about digital twins, the Internet of Things, and other modern stuff, let's say, they are no longer aspirational footnotes. They are increasingly linked to binding milestones, certification deliverables, and even liquidated damages. So it means that you need to be aware of such things, and you need to focus on these things, and you need to be serious about it. My advice is simple: just you need to green these clauses as carefully as you read the payment terms or the extension of time provisions. So legal and regulatory compliance should be reconceptualized, let's say, as a foundational front-loaded project input rather than a reactive back and risk mitigation exercise. So this paradigm shift necessitates like an operational strategy, let's say, so to integrate rigorous compliance review, to systematically align project governance structures with the full spectrum of mandatory obligations arising from regulatory, climate resilience, and digital transformation frameworks, and instituting an integrated cross-disciplinary workflow that ensures close collaboration between legal, technical, and sustainability teams from the early stages of project conception. So this approach is important in the contemporary project landscape where the most significant liabilities are crystallized during the pre-construction planning and design phases, rather than emerging solely as, post hoc disputes. So yeah, my piece of advice would be like that.
Perfect. And Chandni, if organizations want to be future ready from a technology perspective, what is the one mindset shift they need to make now?
Okay, I think in a simpler way, I would say that be the best friends with the AI or with the Mason AI. And why did I say that is because I think the technology or the AI should be treated not in a form that it will help you in just doing the work faster. Rather, it should be put into the business where it is helping you, guiding you in assessing the risk in the initial levels. Because I think in the construction and infrastructure projects, we've seen that there are a lot of documentation which happens. There's a lot of documents, correspondence which happens with the AIs in the place. It helps you to identify the risk, stop getting into the dispute, and ensuring everything is being intact. Also, I think there is another impact that brings in that it also asks for a cultural change in the organization, because when we are shifting towards the technology side of it, it is going to become some uncomfortable situations where whatever the compliances that we have missed, or any sort of a correspondence that we missed, or probably there are other things which we have missed, that is going to be highlighted. However, a successful organizations are not the one who are worried about it. Rather, those are the one who are willing to adapt it and see that, okay, where are the gaps, so that they can actually willingly mitigate those. And with that, when it comes to the people of the organization as well, they also become future ready, where they understand the new technology, they become the part of it, they know how to infer the data from the AIs, and also are able to use on a day-to-day activity. So I would say that technology only creates a value when people are trained enough to know how to use it. So I think, as I said, that be the best friends with the AIs and the Mason AI. So yeah.
Thank you. So that was a genuinely rich discussion. What stands out is that construction law is no longer operating in silos. Regulation, sustainability, and technology are interacting in real time, and the most resilient organizations will be those that integrate legal, technical, and strategic thinking as early as possible. So, on behalf of MRP Advisory, thank you to our speakers and to everyone who joined us today. We will now move to audience questions, and I would request my backend support team to post any questions which our audience wants an answer from us. So the first question is, what are the new developments? Especially interested on GST and contractual claims. So who would like to answer that? I think Chandni?
Okay, I
New
think
developments,
okay. So
especially
yeah,
GST and contractual claims.
okay. Given the widespread of FIDIC contract in both regions, how should subclause 18 and 3 be interpreted when AI tools are used for design, review, and contract? I think I would not go specifically into the subclauses. However, I think the new developments are when we're talking about any sort of a claims, we have seen that, like the way I have been talking about, that there are claims that we put it in our contract when it comes to the FIDIC, right? There are chances, and I think one of the places it happens in the FIDIC contract when we forgot to provide any sort of a notices, or we did not track that our timelines, and we are putting it across. So there are chances that you land up in a dispute, and in case if you have missed on those timelines, that that it's clearly visible that you will not be able to won that case. So from that angle, I think from the development of the technology side, I would say that AI is going to help you in tracking those timelines and ensuring that those are the replies that you are doing, to ensure that in case if you get into the dispute side of it, you still have your conversations and the notices sent on time, where you can present and can win the case. So this is my submission.
Okay. And I think what they're asking about the subclauses 18 and 13 be interpreted. In order to be interpreted correctly, please check me, Nikolai, as well as Mohammed. I think it needs to be as specific as possible. When we are quoting the clause, it needs to be region as well as that particular FIDIC contract, that specific it should be.
Absolutely. I think that we all know that FIDIC-based contract, they are, made many, many years ago. And what we have right now is changing every time and every year. And probably 5, 10, 15, or 20 years ago, people didn't know about AI tools, and they didn't know how it would affect the process of construction, process of disputes, resolution, and so on and so forth. And we know that, for example, in the Middle East region and in Asia, as far as I know, the contracts now are not solely FIDIC based, but are FIDIC based with some kind of adjustments according to I don't know, according to some personal situations, according to I don't know, political situations, according to what we have right now in AI, for example, also. So I think it should be just adjusted in accordance with modern times, in accordance with some, modern news and some, movements like this.
Yeah, if I can pick up that point, and maybe take the question that comes after with it, asking about, AI design works and how the consultant will continue to be liable. Because I think there's a lot of assumption there that things are going to work in the way that things have worked traditionally, where we will have a designer and they're a single point of responsibility. But, generative systems don't tend to work in that way. And we're not going to have necessarily one point of input into the generative system. A point of design, say at an interface between a bit of MEP work and a bit of architectural work. And if that's then run through an AI thing, it's going to take a little bit of what the design shows in respect of the MEP work, and it's going to take a little bit of what it shows in the architectural finishes. And it's going to do something to both of them. And somebody's got to take on responsibility. Someone's got to cross-check it. And maybe that will happen. But at some stage, it's foreseeable. Like none of us double check our spell checkers. If they tell us we spelt the word wrong, we believe that we've spelt the word wrong. We don't go out there very often and say the spell checker is wrong. What will happen with the use of AI tools. We will go to a level of comfort where we will start using these tools. We will rely on them extensively. And then the point where a human being intervenes and says, that's wrong, is actually going to become a point of conflict. Because it's wrong only one time in 10, and then maybe one time in 90, and then maybe one time in 9,000. And that's where we're going to have to rethink the way that we distribute these sorts of liabilities and what it means to actually be responsible and have the liability. Because the level that we have now, yes, we can certainly say that, the FIDIC contract uses language like reasonable skill and care, or we've amended it and we've put in an absolute design obligation, whatever it might be in terms of standards. But those concepts are going to be radically different in terms of how they're understood and interpreted, because the state of the art is going to move, I think, rapidly and far beyond what we are really capable of even envisaging at the moment. I think if you watch, AI systems at work, we start seeing what they're doing with text. We've started seeing what they can do with video. Imagine what they'll do in 2 years or 10 years' time in terms of the liability allocations.
Absolutely. So we have to be that intelligent to use artificial intelligence intelligently. Thank you so much, my co-panelists, and it was an honor and a pleasure. And we can now declare the webinar closed. Thank you.